Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's CJ. Hopefully, everyone's having a fantastic day. It is Monday, November 29th, or is it Tuesday? I think it's Tuesday. Hang on. Whoa. Losing track of my days of the week here. It's Tuesday, November 29th. Hopefully, everyone's having a fantastic day. Thank you for joining this live stream, checking out the chat room. Yes, Raven is here. Robert, welcome. Mojo. No, you're getting Cynthia too. Cynthia will be on at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So excited to have her on. She had to change her schedule around. Originally scheduled 11 a.m., but now bounced to 2 p.m. But thank you for tuning in. I'm excited to announce a few things. As many of you know from the Discord channel, I've been talking considerably about the open mic cast concept in regards to a different type of media platform away from the traditional monologue type podcast, looking at more robust type of dialogue, even opening it up for call-ins as well as different commentators to join the stream. So this is going to be kicking off, going live. I think I have pretty much everything set, ready to go. Just a few other things are going to be happening. So I'll put the links in all the descriptions. So this is exciting. I'm going to be launching this January of 2023. In regards to OMC Open Mic Cast. A lot of different content that's going to be coming your way, and it's really going to be more of a interactive type media that's going to be built around this concept. So it's going to be a lot different than what you're getting with your traditional podcast listening, where it's one-way communication. Really going to be opening up this platform, and so excited to be doing so. So do me a favor. The link will be in the description. Follow along. You can also follow my work at on Twitter, which is at producer CJ1. Obviously, if you're listening here, you're on the YouTube channel, which is CJOMC. And then also Telegram. Launched a Telegram. Been learning a lot about Telegram. I really like the censor-proof type of media it's building. There are several channels that I follow there on Tele as well. I do have to silence it at night, because if not, then literally it'd be blown up my phone the entire night. What's up, Hobo? Good to see you. What's up, Jay? Good to see you as well. Well, let's jump right into the conversation. And you look at the title, and it's about Fauci, the Fauci, and what he does and he does not know. Now, many of you remember we discussed this, that one of the only lawsuits that has really moved forward is a federal court ruled that Fauci and a few other government officials have to testify under oath about whether or not they colluded with big tech to censor certain users and viewpoints. To me, this is probably one of the strongest legal holds that could really hold the Fauci accountable for his potential, I want to say potential here, potential deception, potential liability that he has as he grifted and made his way through the entire situation that occurred during that time period. So with that being said, that this happened with very little media attention. Like, if you look at most mainstream media, no one talked about the deposition that he had to participate in. And for some reason, I'm not sure if Fauci had amnesia or what specifically happened through the deposition. As you know, the cameras were not allowed in the courtroom. They actually, the DOJ ordered the record sealed. So there's very little transcripts that are coming out. Now, a few of the articles that I was able to search out and find that I thought would add a lot of value to this discussion is one, and this comes from the Brownstone Institute, and the link is in the description, so you can read this on your own. But this was a 7-hour deposition that the Fauci had to participate in. I'm not going to read it line by line. I don't think that that's necessary. But the gist of it is that, look, through this process, the transcript is not yet available and no reporters were allowed. But from the attorney generals who brought this suit forward, the plaintiffs in the case and their attorneys and other parties in the lawsuit against the Biden administration, we have some information about the deposition provided by Anthony, quote unquote, I am the science, Fauci. He has also faced the pandemic response and stands accused of colluding with big tech to suppress dissident in violation of the First Amendment, which is very significant, right? We all know that. I don't, tell all the listeners that are tuning into this conversation in regards to the magnitude of the suppression of First Amendment. People who were really questioning the entire narrative, really pushing back on some of the decisions that were made through that entire episode. Now, we don't need to rehash it all. We all lived through it. We all have family members who lived through this. There's no need to do that. But I think that there needs to be some accountability. There needs to be some accountability in terms of the decisions that were made, the collateral damage that occurred through this process, and then more importantly, so that we can learn from this. Because the last thing that we all want as a society is to 2 or 3 years down the road, we repeat this exact same process of what's happened through this. What we do know is a few things. So one of which is a direct quote from one of the Louisiana Attorney General, Jeff Landry, who was one of the AGs who filed the lawsuit. And this is quote unquote from him. So, wow, it was amazing to spend 7 hours with Dr. Fauci, the man who single-handedly wrecked the U.S. economy based upon quote unquote the science, only to discover that he can't recall practically anything dealing with the COVID response. Now, we are all smart enough to understand why Fauci did this. He might as well just have pleaded the fifth through this entire deposition and saved us all through some time. Now, what we do know is through this, and also interview that Joe Rogan did with Mark Zuckerberg, is that, in fact, that the government, the institutions that are supposed to safeguard, that who are really supposed to ensure and look out for our safety, worked with big tech to suppress any dissident conversation coming from either the originations of COVID, potentially from the Wuhan lab. They worked together hand in hand for this and actually targeted individuals as well, which is in direct conflict of the First Amendment that gives us the right to do so. So this is very significant. And I know that here with the changing of guard in the United States in regards to, we're looking now the actual House of Congress now is led by Republicans, and they promise to really, hold Fauci accountable, which I think that they should. I think that they need to bring him in, question him under oath, and potentially, ask him some of these pointed questions that the court did. So I think we need to apply as much pressure to Fauci as possible. So not only in the legal ramification, which this lawsuit has been filed, but also with Congress. I don't think that that's a waste of time at all. I think that they could be doing a few things hand in hand by defunding the NIH, by defunding the FDA as well. So there's numerous things that they could be doing besides just the actual House Oversight Committee bringing Fauci in to provide testimony under oath, which he would have to answer. And if he doesn't, it goes back to the same thing that they're nailing some of the Trump constituents with, right? With the January 6th Oversight Committee. So with the January Oversight Committee, they're basically holding people in contempt of Congress and arresting people. We saw that with Steve Bannon, right? So this is the same route that the Republicans could follow. I don't want to make this into a political discussion because everyone knows that I'm politically homeless. I don't align with either party right now. Truly don't. So the Republicans are leading the House right now. So they could bring Fauci in, bring him in under oath. If he refuses to testify, then they legally could have him arrested for not complying. The same thing that they did with Steve Bannon. Many other people are doing this. So I think this has some merit. It definitely is not a waste of money and or time. So again, bring up a few other things of information which you can follow. Again, all the links are in the description. And this specifically here comes from Attorney General Jeff Landry, who's basically said that, again, after 7 hours of Dr. Fauci basically single-handedly wrecking the entire U.S. economy, everything that he did based upon the science, only to discover through the deposition that he can't recall any of it. So it's pretty eye-opening in regards to that conversation. Now, to me, probably the most important thing in terms of this conversation and what deemed was, why did we arrive at this lockdown policy? How did we arrive at this policy that was like, you know what, shut it all down? Why did we arrive at this conversation? And it's pretty eye-opening to learn that based upon the conversation of how we led at this policy was based upon no science at all. It was pretty much one person's decision. So again, I'm going to quote from this article just for YouTube and the censors that I'm specifically quoting from published information. I'm not speculating. I'm just strictly reading from the article that's posted at the brownstone-institute.org, which basically says this. From our deposition of Fauci yesterday in the case of Missouri versus Biden case, Fauci confirmed that in February of 2020, Fauci sent Clifford Lane, his deputy at the NIAID, as the U.S. representative for the WHO delegation to China. Lane convinced Fauci we should emulate China's lockdowns. The CCP had announced China had contained the virus through draconian lockdowns, a claim now known to be false, given that China's pattern of falsified information. Lane and Fauci should have approached this claim with skepticism. Lockdowns were wholly untested and unprecedented here in the United States. As our attorney at Lefty Lockdowns 1 put it, Fauci, quote unquote, was apparently willing to base his lockdown advocacy on the observations of a single guy relying on reports from a dictator. Not exactly a double-blind randomized trial level of evidence, or indeed any level of evidence at all. Days after Lane returned, the WHO published its report praising China's strategy, quote unquote, China's uncompromising and rigorous use of non-pharmaceutical measures, quote unquote, lockdowns to contain transmission of the COVID-19 virus in multiple settings provides vital lessons for the global response. So why is this important? Because not only did the WHO, the NINH institute these type of lockdown measures, but the rest of the world follow suit. Majority of the rest of the world, not all countries went into those diabolical lockdowns, but we did, right? And many other countries did, based upon one person's opinion. Okay, no science, no evidence to show this one person saying, hey, this is what China did. This is exactly what we need to do. And they need to understand that they need to be held responsible and accountable for that. And again, this article, basically what I just said, that after this happened, the US and UK followed Italy's lockdowns, which had been followed by China and all of a handful of countries around the globe. Immediately followed our lead. Within weeks, the whole world was locked down. And this is basically what took place. I told you earlier that I wasn't going to read the entire article, but I'm getting close to doing that because I just keep going. The link is in the description. Go read this. It's from the Brown Institute. The other article that I'm sourcing in this podcast comes from Aaron Carity. Hopefully I'm not butchering his name up too bad, medical doctor. And he was also been able to observe basically some of the same things that took place in regards to the deposition from Fauci. The link of what he claimed in here is as well. He does a great job of just kind of breaking down the testimony, what has occurred, what exactly what was said. But it's just pretty alarming. You know, if you think about what the measures are that we took place in the United States, there was no science at all based upon these lockdowns. It was strictly based upon one person's visit to China, where he said, hey, he took China's word on it that, hey, these lockdowns work, it's great. And then we basically brought that back to the United States and instituted these lockdowns on the American people, on the public, and then the rest of the world followed suit. One of these came from an actual journalist that was able to participate or listen, or I'm not sure how they gathered information, but one of the favorite quotes that she has from Fauci's deposition today, quote unquote, this is what he had to say in regards to the Great Barrington Declaration, which, you know, we'll go over. I have a very busy day job running a $6 billion institute. I don't have time to worry about things like the Great Barrington Declaration. So again, you know, he has no idea in regards to the statement that he's providing, the impact that he made in regards to the entire, even the origins of CV-19. And this was very apparent in one of Fauci's very last briefings that he gave, and numerous reporters really wanted to ask him questions. This is the draconian level that to me is tied directly in to the Democrats, right? Because government is supposed to be for all people, regardless of left, right. It's supposed to be for all people, all inclusive. And the media asked very specific questions to him. So let's play this video. I have the sound on. So here we go. So this is reporters, and one of which is from a not U.S. media control, but they're so used to when they give these press briefings, whether it's Biden, whoever, they have their cards. They have in front of them who they're supposed to call on, right? That these questions have been vetted. They're prepared for their answers. They already have these in place. But that's not what happened in this situation. So here we go. This is Fauci, his last press briefing with Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, and she got asked some very pointed questions in regards to the origins of COVID-19. So here we go.
Or a far left Democrat, doesn't make any difference to me. I look upon it the same way as I did in the emergency room in the middle of New York City when I was taking care of everybody that was coming in off the street. So that's the thing that troubles me most about this.
Dr. Fauci, only 13% of...
Hold on one second. We have a process here. I'm not calling out on people who yell. And you're being disrespectful to your colleagues, and you're being disrespectful to our guests. I will not call on you if you yell. And also, you're taking time off the clock, because Dr. Fauci has to leave in a couple of minutes. I'm done. I'm not getting into a back and forth with you. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Dr. Fauci,
but she's
only
asking 30 great questions.
You're not being me. Go ahead, Jeremy.
You ask your question, you should allow her to answer.
Go ahead, Jeremy. Jeremy, it is not your turn. It is not your turn.
You can't read the press briefing. You need to call from people across the room. She has a valid question. She's asking about the origin of COVID.
I hear the question.
And Dr. Fauci is the best person to answer.
I hear your question, but we're not doing this the way you want it. This is a disrespectful. It is. I'm done. Simon, I'm done. Simon, I'm done. I'm done with you right now. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. You're taking time away from your colleagues. Go ahead.
Wow. You're taking time away from your colleagues whose questions have been already properly vetted that we're prepared to answer in this briefing. Where do these people think that they're coming from, right? Like, they say that government of the people, for the people, but yet they feel no responsibility at all or to answer any questions that we're all asking as to why haven't we investigated the origins? Why don't we know these things by now? Regardless of political lines, we all need to know, why haven't they been transparent about this? Why haven't they released that information? And here you have a multitude of journalists who I believe were wanting basically to ask the same question and forcing the issue. But here you have a White House under Democratic rule, pretty much very draconian, Nazi Gestapo type, that says, you know what? We're not going to do that. We're operating under our rules. These are our rules. And our rules state that we get to ask, or we get to select the press that we've appointed, the press that we've already have basically aligned up in regards to the questions. And this doesn't fit our narrative today in our press briefing, so we're going to go on. But it just speaks volumes into, and hopefully people that are listening to this live stream understand this, is that when you look at what the communication is, when you look at the entire narrative, the construct of how they've mandated these things, every bit of it is not aligned with our Constitution, with who we are as a people. And I hope that Fauci is held accountable. I hope the people that shut down many of our friends in media, many of our friends in the medical field who question the entire narrative, get their day. get their day. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And so again, you know, the legal. I know that in our Rogue Discord group, we have a few people who are following this. The lawsuit's actually filed, and again, this is probably the at this point where we are legally is one of the best options that we have in regards to holding Fauci and big tech accountable for violation of our First Amendment. And I'm hoping that Congress does. I'm hoping that Congress, the Oversight Committee, does bring in Fauci. They get him to testify under oath. They hold him to the fire. And then not only that, but they also follow that up with legislation to defund or to significantly cut the budgets aligned to NIH, even though we know that most of their funding comes from big pharma, right? So in closing this out, I also want to draw attention to a great conversation, and I give Jimmy Dore a lot of credit. You know, he's really pressing the line on YouTube, and he still remains there. And he was actually able to talk about this entire questioning, and I put the link in the description of the video. Fauci forced to answer COVID questions by judge, and this is one of the doctors who basically worked to really get the actual lawsuit filed and move forward. And this is what he had to say in regards to what I just talked about. He probably does a lot better job of articulating himself in regards to why this is important. So let's let this play. Let's bring this in the stream.
Story of the lockdowns. And I write about this in the New Abnormal, but this was a kind of key linchpin that the story I was beginning to sketch in my book was in fact exactly what happened. So, you know, and a question, if you understand the history of public health, an obvious question is, why did we choose to lock down in those crucial days, weeks of February 2020? And lockdown apologists now are making an attempt to say, well, there are historical precedents for lockdowns. In the ancient world, in the medieval world, they used to quarantine people. Well, if you look at how quarantines used to work in the past, they may have involved locking the gates of a walled city. They certainly involved isolating symptomatic people who were showing symptoms of the illness, but they never involved forcing healthy people to stay in their homes. They never involved not allowing people to ply their trade or to make a living. So there were certainly travel restrictions and sort of border restrictions, if you want to put it that way. But this idea that people in the past used to lock down to manage pandemics is just absolutely ahistorical nonsense. Lockdowns were a wholly novel, wholly modern intervention that had been discussed in the early days of the war on terror following the September 11th attacks. This sort of biosecurity model of responding to biological attacks or naturally occurring pandemics started to be discussed, but it was never rolled out until COVID. So then the question becomes, okay, why did we do that? There was no empirical evidence that this would work. There was no historical precedent that would suggest that this would work from prior pandemics. And yet the whole world, almost in lockstep, adopted lockdowns in late February, early March. And so what happened was basically the world looked to the United States thinking our scientists, our public health agencies are the best in the world. And so if they're doing it, well, we better do it as well. And we took our cue, and this is the height of political irresponsibility. We took our cue on lockdowns from an authoritarian regime that didn't present us with a chance to look at actual data. We just had to take their word for it that they had initiated, society-wide shutdowns and controlled the virus in Wuhan. And we now know that this is absolutely false. China is now seeing record numbers of COVID cases. And their stringent lockdowns and stringent COVID measures continue to this day because for them, it's about control. It's no longer about a virus. So you can understand the Chinese Communist Party wanting to propagate, propaganda that would cover up maybe the origin story of the virus, that it may have leaked from the Wuhan Institute, or that they may have been using their response to COVID for political purposes to gain increasing control over their population. All of that is understandable given this regime's behavior in the past and their record of human rights abuses in the past. But what's shocking is that the United States, in fact, looked to China's response. The WHO, in fact, looked to China's response and announced to the world that this was the way to go. So when Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx in the White House Coronavirus Task Force, taking their cue from Clifford Lane's report, said we're going to have to lock down, there was no public discussion. There was no public debate about this. This is, in fact, what state governors and public health officials around the country decided to do based upon information that was fed to them by a regime that was trying to cover up information we know had already been withholding information about COVID for weeks and weeks. There were known cases in China before China, took notice, before they took action. So the Chinese Communist Party's behavior during the pandemic was irresponsible from the get-go, and was politically motivated to, try to cover up a potentially disastrous event that had happened on their soil.
Okay, I'm going to pause it there, and I'm going to try to get this removed here. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so I am not a CCP apologist. I think that there's many things in terms of their culture and so forth that works for them that are malaligned in regards to what we do here in the United States. But at the same time, though, I think it's important that we don't dilute the actual conversation that needs to take place. And what I mean by that is the finger pointing, at the CCP, because primarily based upon a lot of information, and for YouTube, and they're going to probably be watching this and everything else like that. This is just based upon information that's come out, that based upon a lot of conversations, and primarily to what Rand Paul has specifically asked Dr. Fauci. I think we need the facts. I think we need the facts in regards to the funding of what the NIH and what the funding was in the research in regards to gain of function, because I think that's going to help answer a lot of the questions so that we can better understand was that, basically, why did we do this research offshores? Was it to safeguard some of the oversight that potentially could have happened or occurred here in the United States with these biolabs? I'm sure that we do. I'm sure that we feel a lot safer having these offshore, off of U.S. jurisdiction for either liability or so forth. We've had there's been some basically people saying that in Ukraine there's a few of these labs that have been set up as well. So we need to understand this. So we need to get a better understanding of what's taking place so that in the future that we learn from these things, that we learn from these mistakes, so that we can do better the next time, better preparedness, better understanding of those things, so that we don't fall into the same narratives that we did the last go round in regards to the measures that were put forth in regards to COVID. So again, do your research, trust all the YouTube links that they put up, understanding of it. All the information that was discussed in this live stream were based upon published articles, published podcast. Very little speculation on my part. No direct allegations or anything against Fauci or anything like that, but we need to have a better understanding of it. So appreciate you all tuning in. Again, I think it was important because this is getting very little or none media attention in regards to this important lawsuit that's been filed. So to me, the takeaways from this podcast are two things. Number one, let's continue to pay attention to this lawsuit. Again, that was filed by a couple of state AGs, and basically, but what the lawsuit is, it makes allegations in regards to that the NIH, that Fauci directly worked with big tech to basically suppress and to violate the First Amendment. The second part is that I do support a congressional oversight committee looking at the events that took place in regards to NIH, to the gain of function research, the funding. I think we do need to go ahead and to subpoena Fauci, get him under oath, to answer some very pointed questions. I would love to see Rand Paul handle that conversation, to directly get involved with that conversation. Let's get him on record. Let's hold him accountable for what he's done. And then the third approach, I think that what should be taking place in Congress is to actively begin defunding and looking at all the funding that takes place in regards to how the money moves from big pharma into NIH and the funding apparatus that takes place with these things. And let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that convoluted, corrupt system where you have basically people who are sitting in elected offices who are basically receiving bounties or whatever you want to call them. What would you be, credits or something that helps with basically getting those things approved, because it's so dirty. It's so corrupt in regards to that entire process of how that works. Those are the things that we should be doing right now. The links are in the description to the articles that I discussed today. Again, do me a favor. Looking at January 2023, excited to open my cast, and there's going to be at this point at least a daily conversation. It's kind of, if you will, kind of a overlook of overwatch of the best content that comes out that day. I get several newsletters that come to me on a daily basis, so I'm looking basically kind of putting together like the old Drudge Report. Remember the old Drudge Report, not the new one, don't throw daggers at me right now, but the old Drudge Report that basically was like a catch-all, right? It was like a feed of a lot of articles. I want to kind of replicate that, but in the form of videos and podcast discussion, because there's just so much information that comes at us on a daily basis, and then follow that up with robust conversation, discussion, reaction, interviews as well. So stay tuned for that, launching January 2023. Also, you can follow my work over on Twitter, which is at producer CJ1. And obviously, if you're listening here on this live stream, you're on the YouTube channel. So thank you all for tuning in. And I will I got an appointment at 1 p.m. I'm going to try to get back by 2 so that the interview with Cynthia Chan, that I can help host that with V. But we will be back at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Very excited for her interview as she breaks down the rise of fascism and how that occurred in the United States. So everyone stay safe. God bless. And we will see you soon. Take care. This is CJ. I'm over and out.